Welcome back to the
Tailosive
Tailosive Tech
everybody.
Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Randy's back, if you couldn't tell already. How's it going, Randy?
It's going good. I like stealing thunder. I feel needy sometimes.
I'm here too.
You needed to steal some thunder because we missed you last episode.
Sorry about
so
that.
we need to briefly, as I'm sure a lot of people are probably sick of talking about it, go over your thoughts as me and Nick thoroughly have gone through our thoughts on Worldwide Developers Conference.
Yes.
What did you think of it as a whole?
As a whole, it might have been the best, if not the second best keynote that they've done.
Wow, second best.
That's impressive.
I would.
That's high praise.
That is high praise. I would say, in its totality, the second best. Because when we saw the Apple Watch release, that was the best part of that keynote. But everything else, I was just like, eh. But the way Apple Watch was announced, like,
True.
is like one of the greatest I've ever seen. But only that moment in its entirety. This is either passed iOS 7's announcement or it's just right below. I haven't decided yet, and I don't know how much of it is nostalgic for me at this point. So it's that good. And okay, let's sum this up quick so we don't have to drag our feet through it. iOS.
That's okay. I'm genuinely curious. I want to hear your thoughts as well.
Because what's funny is that we actually haven't. You and I have not. I haven't told any of you guys about my thoughts on it yet because I wanted.
No,
it to
last time I talked to you face to face time was before the event took place. So
Face to face time. I like that.
I want to see the fanboy. Well, I say face to face when it's not really any different because we're still just looking at pixels while we're alone in sad rooms together. But I want to hear
When you say it like that, I feel so
Randy's
broken.
impressions were.
Well,
Well, I'm alone, so
I'm sorry. You're never
this is
alone.
how I cope.
When you're with us, Drew, you're never alone. Wait, Toy Story. It's the Toy Story thing. You saved our lives. We are eternally grateful.
We're eternally grateful.
Okay,
Right.
I'll go in order as best as I can.
Stay focused.
Apple TV.
Okay.
Cool. I don't have the 4K Apple TV yet, so I don't know how dated mine is yet, but I think it's still going to get support. It was cool. Nothing to praise about.
Minor upgrade.
After that, was it iOS? No, watchOS. watchOS. Yeah, it's all right.
Yes.
Right. I don't expect big updates anymore just because like this is pretty solid as is. So
Sure.
it's cool for what we got. Native watch apps, cool. I don't think I'll be using it that much. I might use the tip calculator at most, but even then, I don't eat out like that much anymore, so I don't do that.
No.
So for what it is, it's cool. I just need it to work. So I am completely indifferent about always on display. I don't care.
No, me neither.
It does exactly what I needed to do for workout purposes and notifications, and it's been good for the last 2 or 3 updates. So I'm pretty good. I'm solid on that. iOS.
Okay.
iOS. Oh my God. Amazing. Everything about iOS. Everything. Even the things I've been watching Sam I update with
Yes.
dude, like, oh my God, even all the things it's getting better. And YouTube, I've been watching with your iPad, but I'll get to iPad in a second. So just iOS 13, whoo, I'm excited. Just the fine tuning, what they did with the camera app, I love. How they cleaned up photos, I love. iMessage in our little collective, profiles, which we knew.
Yeah, we talked so much about that before, and they did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like either they heard us all along, and hence the rumors were true, or well, it doesn't matter. That's great. I love the. How they didn't actually announce a new hardware device with Tile, and our devices are Tile. That's so cool. I wasn't expecting that.
That was underappreciated, I think.
I
how interesting
love
that was.
The same technology that we get with like AirDrop, and how like you don't need connectivity to that to do AirDrop and other things like that. It's like they're just enhancing all that further, and so I love that. We don't have to buy another device just to find our things. They are already the thing. Beautiful.
Exactly. It's everywhere.
We have CarPlay. I'm excited about personally, but I don't know for how much longer between now and
you're the one person. Yeah, you're the one person I know who actually uses CarPlay.
Religiously, I love it. It's one of my favorite. CarPlay is one of my favorites, and just seeing how it.
He has
it
a
looks,
setup of candles around his CarPlay altar. as he religiously worships CarPlay.
Alrighty then. CarPlay is awesome. Maps. I've always used the native Apple Maps over anything else, and this just looks amazing. I love it.
Oh, it is.
Dark mode. I mean, smart whatever. It's cool.
It's to be expected.
It's
Dark mode was the most expected and delivered feature, I suppose.
Thank you. I just wanted the volume indicator to be moved. They did. I don't know if we can adjust aspect ratio in camera to not aspect ratio. I'm sorry, to adjust frames per FPS. That's all I ever wanted, to just move it out of
in
settings.
The camera app. No.
That's all I wanted. That's all that's missing from my perfect iOS. Move it out of settings and just put that in there. But iPad OS is the greatest thing that could have ever happened, period. Just for the fact that we can now read cards externally. We're actually using the USB-C port for its function. I am so happy about.
Right.
And it's USB-C.
Amen.
Yes. A proper file management. We can now all share files when we do the podcast in Apple's ecosystem. So,
right.
Ooh,
True.
We need to figure that out.
I love that.
Oh, wait. You're not running a betas, Randy.
I am not,
Ooh.
because I'm not stupid, Ann Sweeney.
Oh.
Your main device. He called me earlier, for context. He called me earlier, and he's like, my watch is bricked. My everything's bricked. He was pooping bricks. So we actually have a proper file management, or it's a lot closer, and we can download. We have native web, like actual desktop running functions on the iPad, and you can download from it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in heaven. I can't wait to actually get it. I'm gonna wait. I thought about running the beta, but I'd rather get my hands on it when it's actually released, because I don't want to deal with it. But I love how smooth iOS 12 is on the iPad, and I use it daily.
Sure.
So I don't want to go to a beta. I don't want to downgrade in that sense, even though everything's going to be an upgrade. But iPad OS is amazing.
So let the hype build.
Yes.
Basically.
Oh.
Woo.
I'm ready.
There will be plenty of time to let it build up over the summer.
The build up is real.
Yeah, and you'll skip all the problems.
So,
I'm sorry.
Mac OS, awesome. The fact that now I can technically have Final Cut on iPad, I can't wait. I can't wait to see what that's about. So, what else is in Mac? I guess breaking
I think
up.
one thing we forgot to talk about on the last one that I really, really liked was a login with Apple.
Yes.
I'm going to use that a ton
Yes.
now, because there's so many apps that make you do the login with Google thing. And our developer discovered earlier today that the login with Apple is also going to be a Android feature as well.
Mhm.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Security in the
So-
forefront. I love it.
Yeah.
Dude,
I'm going to use that a ton.
100%. We talked about this many episodes ago. If I could have just one dedicated ecosystem just for minimalism purposes, I would put all my eggs in that basket for Apple, because they are focusing on what it's important to them that just coincidentally be what's so important to me, security. After the whole FBI thing happened with San Bernardino
Right.
and all that, like everybody unanimously applauded Apple for doing it, and that was the moment for me that solidified my already preconceived thoughts on Apple and security. I'm like, okay, do
Right.
hacks happen? Yes. Nothing's perfect, and there are people who are always going to hack into things. So is anything perfect? No. But the amount of R&D, not even R&D, just pure security that they put into our privacy, I value
Absolutely.
so much. I don't use any of those like LastPass or 1Password. I use Apple's password manager because I trust it. I trust that my information's
Sure.
secure.
Same. Exactly.
So I love it. iOS 13 is just taking what I already love and it's amplifying it. So it's perfect. Mac OS is cool for what I saw. Mac Pro.
Ooh.
I feel like this is the hottest topic. I wanted to, because in the Discord, it's been like, wow, it hasn't even been a week yet. It feels like it was
Right?
forever ago. But
That's what we said last
feels-
keynote.
oh yeah, it feels like it was 2 months ago, and yet it was just a few days ago. But we're still talking about the Pro Display and the Mac Pro in there. I want to know Randy's thoughts.
Okay, here's my thoughts.
All right.
There's two ways I want to approach this, but I will approach it on where I personally feel.
Okay.
I like it. I like its what its purpose is. I like the fact that it is as modular as we were wanting it to be. That I'm kind of happy you got lied to about its functions.
Yeah.
I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
So first of all, screw that guy because he whatever. But he, you know what? Everybody else was reporting on too, so he got to everybody else. So screw him. But I like the fact that this is an actual.
I will say he was very, very convincing.
Yeah. Hey, the best
The
scammers are.
guy, he was a liar, but he knew what he was talking about, and I'm still not 100% sure he was a liar. I think there's a chance that was a concept they had backstage, and they felt like it wasn't going to work out, and it was too proprietary, and the Mac Pro we saw at the event was plan B or plan A or whatever you want to call it. I still think there's somewhat of a chance of that because in the emails, reading over them after the event took place, he did say that there were like several different teams working on different approaches to the same product, which of course could just be a very elaborate lie. I understand that, but it was interesting to document and to speculate on regardless.
Yeah.
But sorry, go ahead. Keep telling me what you're thinking.
I like it. Okay, so here's where the fork in the road comes from me.
Okay.
In a scenario where I'm not saving up to buy a car, and a possible
Or a house.
or a move like me moving, which is on discussion about things. If that was not, if the timing was different, I would buy a Mac Pro, and I would most likely buy that monitor.
Wow.
I do like it. I do like it. Only for it's future proofed. I am running this iMac to the ground, and it's still not dated yet. And I would still continue to use this iMac for other things, but for what that has to offer for video stuff, I genuinely like it. In comparison to when you match it, when you match it to other specs of the same chart and how it is drastically cheaper. How they approached it was just a cluster. It was a messed up how they addressed it. If they would have addressed it differently,
Nick agreed with you there.
If they would have addressed it differently, the message would have been conceived differently. But once I put sideline that emotional response to it, and I was just looking at it, I go, I get it. However, it's not meant for me. I'm not somebody who's doing professional stuff. Everything I have right now is perfect. So because of that, I won't get it.
You mean, Randy, you don't have 1,000+ tracks in Logic?
Actually, when they demoed that, I looked. The highest one I had was 268 or something like that, and it crashed every single time. And that's when I saw there was a problem.
Yeah, interesting.
Because what I have to do, here's my workaround as a musician. What I do is because it crashes after that, I would export them. I would bounce them out in like clumps, so to say. Then I would create a new project, and I would put those clumps together. But that means I have to be so far ahead in the process that I already mixed what I needed to sound because I can't adjust it afterwards. So it's like at that point, I have to be locked in, and I have to know for sure. And that is very difficult to do when you're producing. When you are in the process of mixing, you're not even mastering a track, you're just mixing it. Things are constantly changing, so it's more work on my end, but I have done it before, and I try not to do it because I acknowledge that I don't have the hardware to match that. I would like to still get the Mac Pro without the display because I don't really notice and care about 6K. I just like the fact that it's very big. It's very big, and so the pixel density match.
That's the only reason why you're following my strategy. Get the biggest device first.
When it comes to video editing, and
does that still apply here, Nick?
Yes, it actually does.
Ooh. Listen, when it comes to music editing, screen real estate matters. When it comes to video editing, screen real estate matters. Is it cool that lifetime render and all that stuff in 8K? Yeah, sure. Not for me. I don't have an 8K device. I just have a 4K at my highest capacity. So my 5K iMac is perfect as is for that. So it's not for me. I get what it's doing. In another world, if I wasn't in the process of prioritizing other things in my life, I would consider getting it. But I don't see it. It's going to the market, I guess, that it matters, which is high-end YouTubers. Is I picture all the Marquezes and the Jomos and the,
Jomo.
Jomos.
The Linus Tech Tips.
Even Linus, hey, Lou Unbox Therapy for his Lou Later thing. They're all gonna get it. They're gonna rave about it, or they're gonna diss it. They're gonna do what they normally do, and that's fine. And maybe even independent media companies, I can see them having a use for that. And if it's a business expense, then more power to you. Let your finance department take care of all that, and then it's a beautiful tax write-off for the most for the cost of maxing it out for a Model 3. Have at it, man. So
we're pretty convinced you'll be able to get one for higher than a Model 3 now.
Yeah,
looking at the specifications,
especially with
they're
6
talking about.
monitors. Just get 6 monitors. That's $36,000.
It makes me sick to my
Already more than
stomach
the
that
base
they
model.
suggested that on stage.
that's funny.
That's so gross to me that they were like, you could hook up 6 of these. It's like, so you're saying $40,000 worth of monitors, $7,000 worth of stands, and that's before the computer comes in.
They do it.
Starting at 10,000.
I think the purpose of them doing that is just to prove how over the top this computer is, and that's what I appreciate, the fact that they actually future-proofed it in that way. Now, we won't know for sure until people actually start getting their hands on it and they start testing it out. We won't know if what you say and how you sell it and how it actually performs are actually, synergy. We don't know. We won't know yet.
Mm-hmm.
So because they raved, I remember how they raved about the trash can. They're like, "Oh, this thing's so great. Let's have Seal talk about it."
Yeah.
And he's just talking about.
Right.
He's like, I love this thing. And, he's more British. I absolutely love this thing. No, that's Johnny Ive. I only have one British voice now. What we have here. Anyway, but yeah.
Right.
Am I missing anything about the keynote? Bless you, Aunt Sweeney.
No, you've covered
Thank
it.
you.
I try to go as
Apart
quickly as
from-
possible so that way listeners don't feel so redundant about it. Hey, since we're on the subject with listeners, when you guys get a chance, please go rate this, subscribe, and give us a review and all that stuff because it's really helping
Do all
us.
the things.
Do all those
Hit
things.
that bell
need
notification.
them.
All that.
We need you. We need you. Trevor, no.
I'm trying to decide if I want to segue into a new topic or if I want to argue that Randy shouldn't
Well,
ever
wait.
buy those things.
No, you don't have to argue it because I could tell you in the next 3 to 5 years I won't buy it. I love my iPad so
5
much.
years and 1 day, though, he's going to have 6 of them.
No, because the thing is, like, I only use my iMac for doing stuff like this. I only use it for Logic and Final Cut, and it's not slowing down. Everything's running fine. I have a solid state drive and RAM management. So everything's fine. I'm sitting okay. I know I will have an issue relatively soon because my external equipment's growing with storage capacity and stuff like that. So those are different issues. But the core, like the motherboard, everything about the iMac is great. I'm not going to buy this anytime soon. I'm not interested in it. I would buy it if I didn't care so much about buying a Tesla. Yeah.
I would say even with a Tesla or no worrying about moving, you should buy it. But do we want to go down that road or do we want to go somewhere else? I'll leave it to you guys.
I'll tell you
Let's-
this. I know.
Before we leave Dub Dub, let's go. Sorry, go ahead, Randy.
I was gonna say that I know what your arguments are because I've been following you from the distance. Just because we haven't podcasted yet, I still keep up with your lifestyle. I know what your arguments are, and I don't disagree with your arguments. The fanatic in me appreciates everything that it is. The practical side of me, one can argue it's not practical to buy a Tesla, and that's where I'm just gonna give you the bird and be like, too bad. But six.
No, I'll argue against that.
Well, you have legit like a spreadsheet. I'm not going to argue with you because I'm already sold. But dropping $6,000 on a monitor and with a stand, that money is best utilized somewhere else. 100%. I'd rather use that type of money. Personally, I just rather use it for experiences and travel and stuff like that than something that I'm only going to use for video and audio, which is not my full-time job. It's not practical. It's not.
The simple. There's a huge long lecture I could give on this subject, but it basically comes down to this: both the Tesla Model 3 and the new Mac Pro have 4 wheels. They can price around $35,000. They're made of metal, and
They both have air conditioners.
they
And
both
they both
use.
use 1.4 kilowatts of energy.
They both require 1540 outlets to run,
This is awesome.
and the deciding these things are clearly tied, right? They are clearly on par with each other. The one thing that sets the Tesla ahead, it comes with a display integrated into the design. So
I was
because
gonna
of
say,
that,
the
Tesla wins
runs
by
Windows.
default.
What is the display resolution on a Tesla? I never asked that question.
I haven't looked at
I think
it,
it's just 1080.
but I would say,
It's not really
having
good.
used it firsthand, it's got to be pretty good. It's probably close to a MacBook pixel density. I would say it's like 200 pixels per inch or around there.
Okay.
It was definitely Retina.
Yeah.
Last time we rode in one, I could tell. Oh,
Was it
did
at
you want to
60
talk
hertz?
about our? Did you want to talk about our audience polls? I just remembered that.
Oh!
Thank God I did.
Yeah. So, way to go, gents. I run a poll for audience interaction, and not a single person. I wanna narrate some of this here because you guys. This is funny. I did a poll, as you all know.
Okay.
2 days of recording this. 2 days ago from of us recording this episode, and I just want to go over it
Correct.
because I want us to kind of comment. I wanted to see where our audience was at in the mindset of
right.
it, and I guess I could have had more about what do you think about the display thing, but anyway, let's talk about the poll.
We'll have plenty of podcasts before the fall to talk about the monitor and the Mac Pro too.
You could talk
So
my
I'm
ear
not
off.
gonna. I'm not gonna rant towards Randy now.
So, what was interesting is that you guys all said, or let's start with the first one, talking about what's your favorite part of the keynote. About borderline 90% of you said iOS and iPadOS, and I'm gonna go on the guest here because like that's the most used OS that we all pretty much use. We all have a phone, and so I can understand why that's like.
True.
It was interesting that I wasn't expecting the Mac OS, Mac Pro to poll so low, but I get it. Just because if it's you had to choose your favorite part, iOS 13 is amazing.
Absolutely.
tvOS and watchOS, I'm already kind of forgotten about it just for the sake of I was more captivated by iOS. So I get it. I get it.
I get that too. Yeah.
My biggest one though, when I first thought about doing this poll, is I wanted to talk about Touch ID or 3D Touch.
Yes.
It was cool to see that over 80% of the audience, at least the 110 people who voted on it, they also use 3D Touch, which tells me that in one sense, I'm sad that just the hardware is going away. Even though the software will be there in a long press, I love how quickly we can click things, and I know you've demoed it, Drew. I mean, you understand. We all understand. I know Nick, is always all about that OLED and the best of the best. It's sad to know that hardware is going away, but if it can save us money, which it probably won't, if they're gonna put that money, if they're gonna if they're gonna allocate that money
Which it
towards like
probably won't.
better sensors in the camera or whatever, if our price stays the same and you're doing away with that, okay? Because I don't think it comes down to the fact that like what you said, Drew, it could not have been that much more. You know what I mean? But if
they can do it on a iPhone 6s,
yeah. Listen,
how much more is it really to keep it around?
If it's bottlenecking part of the process, okay, fine, whatever. But I did not know that many people use 3D Touch, so we're all gonna share some growing pains together once we inevitably move away from the 3D Touch capable devices. So
I've seen a lot of people upset about that too, both in comment sections and in chat and on Twitter and everything. People who up front said like the whole reason I bought a 10s was because it had 3D Touch. It was like The only reason I bought it over the 10R was because I love that feature so much, and now they're getting rid of it the following year. It just makes me feel cheated on, especially with iOS 13 now kind of saying, oh, what? 3D
You don't need it anymore.
need that. You can just long press. Who cares? You know, like seeing, to me, it's become obvious. Like, I know it's a rumor that they're removing it on the next one, but ever since I installed the beta and now I see them bringing the 3D Touch menus to the non-3D Touch devices, and I see the way that there used to be peek and pop before, like if someone sent you a text message of a picture, you used to be able to push hard on it to open it up, and now that's not there anymore. And I'm seeing all these things, and I'm like, clearly this is them trying to prep us.
Yeah.
Like, this is obvious to me. It's not like well, maybe they won't get rid of it. Like, whole long pressing and pressing hard on a picture, and iMessage doesn't do the same thing. I just discovered that today. And the 3D Touch features coming to the haptic touch or non-haptic touch devices, like even on the iPad, I'm just like, yeah, this is happening. I gotta get used to it. Let the reality set in. But it's a sad move for Apple because they do remove a lot of things throughout history, but this is not one of the things that they're removing in favor of a better alternative.
Yeah.
It's not a better alternative. It's a flat out undeniable compromise of just like, this is worse, but we can't afford to keep it in there anymore, or we don't want to keep it in there anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just depressing, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I get majority of people agree too, you know. So
Yep. I think it's very biased because we're the tech community, and I think outside the tech community, it's probably used a lot less.
No, well, my girlfriend noticed she went from 5S to 6S to 7 to 10R, and so she had from 6S and 7 involved in there, and she had 7 up until last year. She didn't know she was using as much as that she was, but now that she has the 10R, she goes, I do notice that I don't have it anymmer, but I untrained myself to try to like hold something down like that. So it's more of a
True.
Yeah, we'll all adjust and adapt as we are good at doing that. But yeah,
we'll move on, like Steve Rogers said at Endgame. Some people don't move on when 3D Touch.
Spoil it.
Oh, come on!
Wait, no,
$2.7 billion. Who hasn't
time.
seen it yet?
Yeah, we can talk about it now.
Some people move on with 3D Touch, but not us.
Not us.
Plus, that was in the trailer. It's not a spoiler.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so with the
how about you, Nick? Do you know people in your personal life that aren't into the tech field that notice 3D Touch?
Yeah. Well, so I was going to say my mom accidentally uses 3D Touch more often than not. So
really?
Yeah. So she'll be I don't know. It's something about not knowing the difference between like a long press and a hard press and a tap.
Yeah.
It's just very, and I totally understand why it's confusing, like 100%. If you're not used to those kinds of things, like the difference between clicking something and adding pressure to it is completely different. So sometimes I'll be like, oh, click on the email and whatever, and she'll like pop it up in 3D Touch or whatever. And I'm like, no, let go, and then just tap it. Or when I'm like, okay, if you want to rearrange your home screen icons, just press and hold. And, you know, she accidentally 3D touches on something and it brings up the little share button or whatever. It's just like these little things where it's like, I understand why it's there, and obviously you can turn it off anytime you want. But, you know, I like it. I use it a lot. Like, I've noticed probably 6 or 7 times just on my iPhone that over the past 2 days where I'm like, I wish I had 3D Touch. Probably one of the biggest ones was moving the cursor on the keyboard.
Yeah.
I realized you can press it and hold on the space bar, but it's just so much more convenient to just 3D touch wherever your thumb already is and move the cursor
I got so
around.
used to that.
Yeah, and that's so much muscle memory that I'm like having, and now it's like swipe. So if I just try to 3D touch and like swipe around, I'm like typing words out.
Have you been using swipe?
Not what I want. I have. Okay, so Scott Stoll, one of my friends, and also follows the tech stuff. He is all into swipe. I do not understand how he does it. It's just all like instead of like words being a series of letters, they're just like swipes for him. I don't understand how that works, and I didn't learn it that way.
It's more gestures.
Exactly. But I am using it now. Now that it's like default on the stock keyboard and I don't have to use some crappy third-party keyboard, I do see the efficiency in it. Like if I'm going to type the word it's just easier to make like a backwards V basically instead of type THE. And so I think I'm going to enjoy it the more I use it. And I've only been using it for 3 days now maybe. And so it's not something I have much experience with yet, but I do see myself liking it in the
Funny
future.
story with that. One of my biggest, not my gripes, one of my girlfriend's biggest gripes of leaving Android back. So she became a iOS user when iOS 7 came out, and that's when I got her to switch.
Right.
Her only gripe that she hated about Apple for the longest time was like, I lost my swipe feature. When they had third-party swipe, she used it for the longest time, and then eventually she's like, it's too buggy. So she gave up because it was just too buggy.
Yeah.
And now that it's back, and I told her, she goes, like, she's more of an Apple sheep than I am. She won't admit it, and she's not in a tech way. But every time I try to entertain the ideas, like, oh, I'm thinking about trying an Android, she looks at me like, don't you dare. Don't you dare. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, you will not do this to me. So her only thing that she ever missed, after basically a decade, right? The only thing that she missed was the swipe feature. When I told her, it's like, guess what? She was like, that's it. That's the last nail in the coffin. I am forever yours, Apple. So,
I had a very similar background with that, except I was never, into Android growing up. But once they announced the third-party keyboards, I think that was iOS 8. I could be wrong.
I think you're right.
But I think
Yes,
when
it was
iOS 8 came around, they let third parties make keyboards, and the one I tried was Gboard because I actually appreciated that Google didn't try to imitate Android on iOS, and instead they tried to make a keyboard that looked like an iOS keyboard, except it had all the Google features, and it had the assistant, and it had GIF searching, and it had swipe built in. And back when iOS 8 came out, I used Gboard, I think, for like a good 6 months to a year, somewhere around there. I got very, very used to swipe. And similar to Brittany, I started noticing the bugs, and it started crashing a ton of the time. I don't know if it's Apple's fault or Google's fault, but all of a sudden it started not working for anything. And once those bugs started rolling in, I was just like, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. What's the point? So that's when I taught myself to not use swipe anymore, but just because I was like, it's cool, it's handy, I like it, but it's not practical because the third-party ones keep bugging out, and the default one, as boring as it is very reliable, and I've never had bugs with the standard built-in keyboard. So that's why I'll just keep using that. And until the iOS 13 beta, I've never been a swipe guy. I've never tried to go back to Gboard. They may have fixed all those bugs. I don't know. I just never messed around with it out of just rule of like, I don't want to fall in love again. I don't want to get my heart broken.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't give me hope.
As soon as I got the beta, I started trying swipe again, and at first it felt very unnatural. I was like, this is kind of weird. I'll just keep pressing the buttons. But literally just today, I started using swipe more extensively. Now I'm like, I can just fly on this thing now. I could get a lot faster. Plus, you can even access it on the iPad Pro now when you condense down the keyboard, which I thought was dope. So yeah, like already, like as of today, I'm starting to go back to the swipe feature, and I'm kind of like, this is one of those classic Apple sheep moments of I don't want to do it until Apple does it, because then I know it'll be a reliable, consistent experience, and I don't have to worry about weird app crashes and bugs like I did with the Gboard setup.
Well, I mean, that makes sense. So. That makes sense about why you want to wait, because it's like it stopped, because I was using it too for a while. I was never completely sold on it from the third-party keyboards. But she swore by it, and I was like, let me try. I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. So I swipe. But it felt kind of gimmicky for me. And then when it started bugging out, I was like, screw this. It doesn't matter. And so I was just like,
the learning curve is not comfortable, I would say.
I like that.
Right.
I was like, I'd rather have that.
You like hearing the sounds?
I have my silencer on all the time. I never hear those buttons.
Yeah. Well, when I'm home,
I had to turn the silencer off because whenever I'm typing with AirPods in, there's always like a half-second delay between the little and my finger actually touching it. It's so annoying. It's like I start typing and then like half a second later, it's like.
Why don't they just know when you're about to press the button?
Exactly. Come on, Apple.
Come on.
They could use the time stone.
Yes.
Just know these things.
Why can't they just predict it? I don't know. But yeah,
Well, there are only
Swipe's great.
14 million features.
Okay.
Were there any other polls you wanted to touch on?
Yeah. I'm just kind of going down the list here. The one I found interesting,
Okay.
I asked about I said with the introduction of iPad OS, did it convince people to buy an iPad, or like fully transfer to that as their primary?
Like the Journ.
Like the Journ, yeah.
I know.
He
we
bought
need
an
to get him
iPad
on
while
again.
recording his
Come
video
on, dude.
about the
That was
iPad
awesome.
OS.
That was awesome.
And did you see Marquez's video about it? Hi, Marquez,
Yes,
by the way.
I did.
Hi, Marquez.
Thanks for listening.
Hello. Come on the show.
Come pay us a visit. We miss you.
It's a meme at this point.
AirPower's dead. And thanks for stopping by, everybody. And anyway, so what was interesting about me asking about that question is like, did it convince you? Did iPad OS convince you? And the questions I posed or the answers I posed were, you have already been using it as your PC replacement. Yes, it finally is good enough. No, it still needs more work, or no, you're still not interested. And where it was almost neck and neck, almost closest, was that people have already been doing it pre-iPad OS, and the runner-up to it was, no, it still needs more work. So that told me, even though all the polls were still nothing past like 40%, so it's kind of neck and neck, all of them, but what that told me is that it was kind of polarizing in the sense that's like, either you're all for iOS, there being iPad OS now, and you are all in that, or as like our developer was talking about, is like, no, until I can run Xcode and do the more intensive stuff on iPad, it still needs more work. And it's interesting that I think iPad OS only wedged the gap further, because it's either for I believe that people are saying, yes, it's finally good now, or they have already been. So 56% of the people, so it's barely more than half. 56% of the people said, yes, this is it. I think that's the side that's like, I only do the consumer stuff. They're not like heavy into it. And then the other 44% are people who need to do a little bit more, whether it's gaming, coding, video editing, audio engineering, a little bit of everything. It's interesting. That's like, it's still polarized. And I think it just kind of split a little bit more. Now, granted, yes, this is by our own community, so we have tech enthusiasts, but I feel like that was where I wanted to hear the most people. I'm curious about the tech enthusiasts, what they think about iPad OS, because any consumer outside of like on the YouTube or with Tailosive, I think they don't care. Like, yeah, the iPad's good enough. Everything's just good enough. But the people who are like looking for that futuristic, like, no, this is the post-PC era time, outside of just iPhones or smartphones, like it was interesting to see like this convinced people, because I'm telling you, and it's almost like my mantra at this point, my iPad is my daily, with the exception of Logic and Final Cut. That's it. And so I think other people, like, I don't use Xcode, but we know that, Ethan does, and so like people have their reasons. But the mouse support, the mouse support, and the fact you can pair a PlayStation or Xbox controller. Oh
yeah, I was happy about that.
That's
too.
so cool.
That was great. I got ticked off though, because I found out you can only pair a normal Xbox One controller with the iPad and not a Elite controller, which annoyed the crap out of me.
Why? Why can't
I have no idea why. I don't know if it's a software update the Elite needs or something, but people were talking about it on our Discord earlier, and they said they could get the regular 1S controller to pair, but not the Elite for some reason. And I was like, well, that's BS, but I don't know. I still have a standard controller I never use, so I guess that'll be my iPad controller now.
What about that
controller,
the game controller that came with Apple TV?
The Nimbus?
Nimbus. That's it.
Isn't that thing useless now? I bet that company feels stupid.
Yeah.
They're like, now you can pair your PlayStation Xbox. Nimbus is like, dang.
Oh, man.
Why would anyone get us now? There's no point.
Yeah.
But, yeah. I think you're right that a lot of people have this. There's a couple more like pro end features they need for the iPad for them to be able to switch over to it, and the common one I notice I don't think it's everyone, but the common one I notice is they want the certain brand application that they already know to be moved to the iPad. It doesn't matter if there's an iPad alternative. It has to be the same brand. There's so many people that are like, I want to switch to the iPad, but I'm waiting for Final Cut and I'm waiting for Photoshop. And Photoshop and Final Cut aren't there yet. And I'm like, they are. They're just not called Final Cut and Photoshop.
Right.
Exactly.
They're under different names, but they'll do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And the question still remains, if, like, for one, if they were going to bring Final Cut to the iPad, why haven't they already? For two, how much are they going to charge for it, or are they going to include it with people who already bought Final Cut Pro? As sweet as a deal as that would be, I feel like it's a lot of work to try to optimize that app for the iPad, and just to throw it in there for free would probably hurt the revenue quite a bit. So to me, it would make sense that they would charge an additional upfront cost for Final Cut Pro iPad OS version. Whether it's $300, $50, $100, you got to keep in mind that would be a big purchase compared to what we have currently with LumaFusion and Affinity Photo, which, in my experience, Affinity Photo can do basically anything Photoshop can.
Right.
But it's not called Photoshop. Therefore,
It doesn't count.
it's not the same. Doesn't count. It's got to be under the Photoshop Adobe branding. Otherwise, it's not a real. So some of it is a little bit of brand loyalty, which I'm one to speak about. But to me, I'm just like,
Yeah.
if you need something for advanced video editing, it's there. You know,
Yeah.
like you don't need to wait for Final Cut. You don't need to wait for Adobe Premiere. Premiere sucks on Mac anyway. You've got LumaFusion present. You've got Affinity Photo, which does super high-end stuff, seriously. Like the different settings and toggles baked into that app that I find sometimes, I'm just like, holy crap, this is way too complicated even for me. So it's there. I just think that they're hesitant because they feel like that there will be a learning curve, and therefore they don't want to switch. I feel like that's a lot of the audience right now that chooses no, it's not there yet. It needs all the apps I already have.
Yeah, I think you're spot on about like brand loyalty, but in the sense that I think maybe psychologically people are comfortable in what they like grew up on or what they're familiar using. And I remember having a slight hesitation to buying LumaFusion back in 2017 when it was a nothing.
Way back.
And all I
Yeah.
had was your recommendation. And I was like, oh, God, I'm scared.
Just
but
Drew. Drew's the only one talking about it.
He was. He was the only one. But I was like, $20. You know what? Screw it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It would be the first time. Like I weighed the risk. I was like, okay, fine. And then I got into it, and back then I was like, oh, this is amazing. And I forget how much more optimized it has become. Because for me, it is the dedicated iOS editor for anything animated for me, and I love that. I love that it's built with iOS in mind. And I only bring that up because it's like people have to be willing to step out of their comfort zone when they're willing to walk away from a certain operating system that they're so used to, or a certain software that they're so used to, not knowing what's beyond that wall. Because, like you said, with Adobe's versions of everything, they're crap on the Mac anyway. Everybody says it. Paul just made a tweet about like, oh, this is not working, and how much he hates Adobe Audition for audio things. And I'm like, oh, you wouldn't have that problem with Logic or little alone GarageBand, a free application that's built in.
I feel like Adobe's constantly trying to convince everyone that their software is worth the huge monthly fee, and it's just not true. If you step outside the Adobe ecosystem, if you will, you'll find it's not a desert. It's a lush forest full of diversity and different apples. Cheaper options. Lots of fruit from the tree of wisdom.
Isaac Newton.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, let's move on to this next one. Majority, like a mass majority of people were happy that iOS supports all A9 processing iPhones and tablets.
that was anticipated, I think.
Yeah, but what's interesting is that most of them, over half of them, don't even have. Doesn't even have one. They don't even have it. Like, yeah, it's cool, but don't have it. But I posed this question, asking like, do you think they should be like almost like old school Apple and clean it up? And like, nope, cut the fat. it's dead weight, cut it, and clean up the lineup. And I asked that in the sense of like back when it's like, all right, 2-3 years support, stop support, 2 or 3 years, and then stop support like how they used to. And the more I think about it, I'm glad this post Steve Jobs Apple is this way, because in a time where competition is very fruitful, thriving, healthy, this is one thing that nobody is even close to Apple about saying, oh, we still support 24 months, up to 24 months, and we're still, to this day, iPhone 5S is still getting supported, and a 2013 phone is still getting support right now. And
right.
Nobody can say that about anything else. Not their laptops, not their tablets, not their phones, maybe not even their little, not their cars. I don't know, but like it's just like nobody.
Unless it's a MacBook.
MacBook. My 2011 MacBook Pro is barely hanging on, but it still survives, and it's there just for nostalgic reasons, because that was my first MacBook.
They get nearly a decade of OS upgrades.
That has a
It's
CD
insane.
drive, right?
It does have a CD drive. Yeah.
Wow.
What's that like?
Yeah, Louise has one.
That's OG.
So the fact that they're just continuing the trend, like, hey, A9 still gets supported. I'm glad the iPhone SE is still being supported, because there is some nostalgia. Right? I think we've all talked about this. I just love that boxy design. That's why I love the iPad so much, and I love that phone so much. Something about the
Sure.
it grips differently. It just feels more industrial, but in the good way, not in that like non-life way. So it's cool, and I'm glad everybody likes it. Well, for the most part, everybody likes it. And unlike you guys, you bums. No, I'm just kidding. Only Nick. Majority of people are not. Nobody. Majority of people. 70% of the people are waiting to put a beta on their device.
Oh, you
Well,
know
they
what
kinda
that
have
means?
to
That
now.
means there's a third of the people not waiting, which means I am in the minority. Still.
It means you're
They
the
made
status
it
quo.
particularly difficult to get the beta this year.
Yeah.
So
Oh
I'm
my
not
gosh.
surprised by that, because
I had to buy a
they-
$1,200 Mac. This was the most
yeah,
expensive
they put some
beta
serious
I've ever
walls
installed.
up.
That's cool though.
Yeah.
I'm glad. Now we can actually have a more concentrated beta testing, because beta testing is what it is. We're just working out kinks. If you have a whole ecosystem of people trying to get in on it early, like early access, you're actually kind of screwing up the testing part of it, because
The
they're-
data, yeah.
it's costing more energy and more resources,
Yep.
and getting the feedback. We need people who are developers. Like, if you're gonna pay for it, if you are having a developer license for it and you're testing it, I mean, you are. I think learning about the Tailosive app has taught me a lot about, like, in regards to the feedback. Those people, like, if it's limited and you have to be, in a certain perimeter or a certain timing to get into it, and it's very limited.
Sure.
I like the fact that now there's more quality in the feedback, and the people who are in it know that, so they're taking almost like their job more seriously about it, especially if you're paying for it. So I'm glad it's so hard for people to get in there, because this is not the public beta. It shouldn't be out there. Public beta is the early access to it. This is true beta testing right now, and we need the developers to be in there while they're trying to clean up their own development of whatever, while testing it and reporting it back to Apple for a controlled environment of research for it. We're still in R&D for it.
Yeah.
So I think I'm glad it's locked out. I wish it gets more restricted down the future, because it's as hype as everyone is, and people want that instant gratification. It's going to be worth it when we wait. Public beta comes out in a couple of months. Not even in a couple of months.
In July, in like a month.
July at some point. They
Yeah,
didn't have
guys,
a specific
wait.
date. But I hope the Apple Card comes out at the same time.
Oh, me too.
Oh, we're still worried about this. Are you
Yes.
still hurt about that, Drew?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
I'm not hurt. I'm just disappointed.
Same. Hard same.
I watch you I watch you cry yourself to sleep mode every night.
Wait,
Do you?
That's kind of creepy.
Oh yeah.
Ew. What?
What do you call me on FaceTime using the iOS bug or something?
What do you,
What do
call
you-
him daddy? Whoa.
I'm putting
Oh
some
my
tape on my iPhone camera today.
And tape up the mic too while you're at it.
No wonder my battery drains so much. This explains everything.
You still got it. And then the very last thing that I pulled out was asking people how would they rate the keynote, and it, 97% of people said it was extremely well, a lot of info, to being it's one of the best ones, and one of the best ones was the most voted one, and I agree. Now, because I have not listened to the last episode yet that you guys did without me,
it was just about you.
Listen to
it was
it?
very little tech.
Oh.
My question for you guys is, because now you know my thought, and I just want a quick summary. What did you guys think of the keynote? That's my only real question.
It was great.
Loved it.
I hate both of you.
I loved it.
That was a. I am not sold on your excitement.
Go ahead, Nick. Go ahead. You go first. And then I'll recap.
My whole comparison was based off of the OG iPhone keynote, because I watched it late. I watched Dub late, and so right after I finished watching it, I watched the Apple iPhone 2007 reveal keynote, and just kind of compared them. I think it was one of the best modern keynotes. I think the Apple Watch keynote obviously had its moment. That was probably out of if I had to pick 10 minutes of Apple history that I wanted to be there in person for, that's the 10 minutes for the Apple Watch reveal. Yeah. But I think the iPhone,
I know, we know you have that
the
line
best,
memorized. Good morning. Hey, he said it. He said it this time. He only said it twice. So, good morning. Thank you. Thank you.
When he was saying thank you very much, we're all just sitting on the edge of our seats, say good morning, please say good morning. I need to hear it.
Say it down now.
It's yes,
I love it. And welcome to Dub. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, Dub was great. I think it was probably one of the best full keynotes, because all the other keynotes, there's always some fluff. Like the Apple Watch keynote, the first
musical
20
guests,
minutes
get
of
out
it
of
was
here.
Exactly right. Like just all this fluff. And last
you
year's Dub did a pretty good job about it.
God,
yes,
cringe.
There's always going to be cringe.
Yeah,
but last year's WWDC, they kept it moving, which was good, but the things that they were announcing were not very exciting.
Yeah.
Like iOS 12 was just like a bug fix improvement update.
Well, sir,
they had
really
some
quickly,
things.
if you remember, they were supposed to bring these features last year, but because of iOS 11,
iOS 12 was a big "we're sorry." And that's fine, because we needed a "we're sorry" year. You know, we needed a big year that was like, let's catch up on some things, group notifications, group FaceTime. We're not going to do anything big, but we just want to make sure everyone knows. Everyone who got iOS 11 will get iOS 12. We're going to try to patch up all of the bugs that iOS 11 caused for you. And that was appropriate, I think, for the year. But definitely, without question, less exciting when they do years like that, where it's just kind of patching up some of the holes in the ship. And this year, I think we finally, since the iOS 7 era of upgrading, where there were giant operating system upgrades, this is the first year in a long time where I feel like Apple has started to nail the art of making a performance boosting operating system alongside a design boosting operating system, and keeping it stable across a huge variety of different devices. And iOS 8 was pretty minor. iOS 9, okay, it's catching up. But I guarantee if you go back, it's incredibly difficult to remember what came out with each of those OSs. Can you remind me all the big iOS 9 features?
iOS 9 had new Apple Maps improvements.
Wow. I'm excited.
Well, I'm sold.
And every year they had a different control center. It was like, well, let's try this now.
Hey, that card one in iOS 10, I loved it. I loved iOS 10.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That was my favorite one, because that was the first time. iOS 10 was the first time I got on a public beta, because I loved it that much. I was like, it was so cool. And then iOS 11 just completely annihilated me. In all the wrong ways.
I feel like they found their stride.
Yeah.
And the iPad OS, I think, is without question the biggest upgrade to the iPad we've ever had.
Can I ask you guys a question?
No.
No.
Too bad. I'm gonna ask it anyway. Don't you feel that the under the hood performance stuff, even though they're boring, are the most necessary in the sense that, like, when you think of old, like, even though you guys probably weren't using it back then, I remember Leopard, Snow Leopard, Lion, Mountain Lion, and those incremental updates for Mac OS before we started going into Maverick, the one right before Maverick, that was the best intermediate like upgrade cycle on a Mac OS, just system wide performance out of any of them that I can remember, even like maybe to this day. Granted, I haven't run the Catalina yet, but when I got the one before Maverick, it was the most stable in every sense of the word, and it was nothing but performance perfecting. And it made me think then that we need, if not every other year, every 3 years or to 2 to 3 years, we need that because it's essential for just patching out those weird kinks and bugs and growing pains, so to say. And I never thought about it back then until this time around when we had iOS 12, that iOS was in that same platform, because we went from iOS 6, which is an amazing version of that era of iPhone, to iOS 7, and we've just been cleaning up iOS 7 this whole time. But now I think about it, I'm like, no, these are really critical. And even though we're bored about iOS 12 now, like we were just saying, it's so essential. My question to you guys is, do you feel that they should do that every other iOS? That just like, let's take a year to just clean it. The same way we get iPhone something S, iPhone something new, iPhone something new S.
Yeah, I feel like not just should they, it's kind of natural for that to happen, because the year, especially the year in 2019, where it feels like almost the entire event was just Apple listening. It was just Apple being like, this is a heavily requested feature, so we added that. This is a heavily requested feature, so we
monitor
added that.
stand.
Yeah. Everyone wanted...
We're listening, guys.
Except, put aside the XDR or 10DR. And that's basically what they did. Even including the Mac Pro, they answered a lot of people's direct requests, and I feel like it's natural for them after that to just be like, okay, let's try to make the best out of it performance-wise and speed-wise. And it's not like I've felt like there's never really been a worldwide developers conference that wasn't productive or wasn't helpful.
Right.
Every iOS upgrade over the years has always made it better. Maybe some people could argue iOS 11, but I would at least say the ideology, the ideal situation for people like me who didn't have any issues with iOS 11. For us,
soul.
It was still getting better. It was improving. Yeah. So ideally, it's natural. Like iPhone super cycles, like the iPhone 10, for example, you're gonna have long periods of incremental upgrades, of perfecting and diversifying whenever you have a giant upgrade like we did with iOS 7, or I would compare iOS 13 to that as well. Just such a drastic upgrade for both performance, aesthetics, and stability. Just so much added within a single year. You're going to have that followed, like you said, by lots of S years. It's not only something they should do, it's just inevitable. I disagree with people that think they need to just redesign everything because they're bored. That's a very stupid reason to update an operating system. We've been looking at these the same way, and Safari looks the same. Let's make it different, but just because that's not a good reason. You take the chance at confusing people. You take the chance of getting people who like the way it is and don't like change, but also people who get bored. So there's no way to make them happy. So I just say don't bother.
Right.
Just if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If you're going to go minimalist, just keep it minimalist. Don't make this a 7-year tradition. Every 7 years you have to change the design aesthetic again. It's just going to make it hard to stay on top of for the app developers. And the main reason there was such a design shift with iOS 6 to 7 was the change in software development heads switching to Jonathan Ive. It wasn't just, we're bored, let's try something else.
And also with Steve Jobs passing, he was all about that skeuomorphism going on.
Right,
and,
right.
It was a natural change in leadership as a whole after, SJ passing
There's
away.
a lot of reasons to update the look at that time.
Yeah, that's
Whereas there's very little reasons just like there's very little reasons to just be like, it's been the same for so long, let's just change it. So yeah, I think you're right though. I think we should come to expect the S years, the incremental upgrades. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I completely agree. I know it sounds boring, but whatever. That you guys make really good points. I would obviously prefer, that radical design update every single year. That would be nice. Twice a year, do a OnePlus. But
so what would you go to, Nick?
What
after minimalism design? Like, would you go back to skeuomorphism?
Yeah, I would. When we sat down to design iOS 14, we took out a blank piece of paper, and we left it that way. And is iOS 14.
I think you're getting better with your British accent. You're slowly getting better at it. I dig it. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I've been listening to a bunch of Benji, so Sorry.
Oh, Benji.
Oh. That'll do it.
So now he just thinks you're mocking him. I don't sound like that, mate. Listen here, you bloke. I don't sound like that, right? You all right?
I think they need to embrace the look of the XDR display and just put holes on everything.
Listen.
Just holes everywhere.
Ooh. I'm never going to look at the back of it. I don't care.
I actually do look at the back of my iMac a lot.
You're all types of weird, Drew.
I have my desk situated in a way that when I'm sitting on the couch in the living room, the back of the iMac is what I see. And I think looking at the XDR display and looking at what I've had for the past 2 years, I feel like the XDR display aesthetics-wise was a huge step backwards. I know the people it's marketing towards doesn't care. Drew, you're not part of this market. Shut up. I'm just saying aesthetic-wise, as a company that brags so much about how their products look.
Drew just had an argument with himself, ladies and gentlemen.
I will bring up a counter argument, and people will throw the same argument at me over and over again, like it's gonna mean something.
It's not
the 80th
for
time.
you,
but it's not for you. I know it's not for me. That doesn't mean you can't criticize it. It's like my criticism of the Roadster. Roadster's not for you. I know.
It's for me, though.
I'm
it's
still
for me. I'm just taking out the driver's seat and sit in the back.
That's Roadster.
That's my
plan.
This is why I don't have high hopes for the Apple car.
We already got the Apple car. Y'all missed it. It was the Mac Pro. It has wheels, air conditioner.
Can someone do I want to see, I guess Marquez could do it, or TLD could do it, like a speed test where someone has to sit on the Mac Pro with wheels, and then they put it on a racetrack next to the Model 3.
That's perfect. I would
and then
love that skit
they'll
so
tow
much.
the Mac Pro and then rotoscope out with their super duper fast computers.
Yes.
Rotoscope out the car that's towing the Mac Pro, so it'll look like the guy who's like barely keeping his legs off the ground, who's riding on top of the Mac Pro. He like outruns the Model 3. And everyone's like, with those 28 cores, can't compete.
We just have a skit idea, ladies and gentlemen.
No, I can't do that.
Of course can.
we could get a Tesla, but we're not getting a.
Hey, we got green screens now. We can do this.
We would need Tech Racks to help us, who lives in Sacramento. So,
Tech Racks.
So we want to take a Mac Pro with wheels, and we want to go 100 miles an hour with it. So how possible is that?
Yes.
How endangered is my life?
Does the Mac Pro have seat belts as a module?
You know what? That probably
is the Mac
could
Pro
fit into one of the
self-driving
slots.
enhanced autopilot.
It should be.
It should be with that amount.
I think so. With all that RAM. Hopefully it doesn't ram into anything.
Got him.
Ooh.
Have you guys been seeing any more of those rumors on the Apple car? Segueing to a slightly different topic.
No. And
No.
I wish. No.
Well,
Please
there's
explain.
been a couple recently
Tell me.
that Apple has
How
been
recent?
looking
Sorry.
to. What's that?
How recent? Sorry.
Like a week ago.
Oh, okay.
Tell me. No,
Interesting.
I haven't heard.
I can tell you basically what
Please,
to Google, but Apple was looking to buy a startup company that specializes in autonomous driving, and apparently they're pretty close on that deal to buy them out. And
Is that startup called Tesla? Because I swear to God.
No. They tried to buy Tesla a long time ago. That came out in the news as well.
Right, I remember that.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But we're not getting rid of Elon Musk and his 420 shenanigans.
That was ridiculous. I don't know why they thought they could get away with that. Hey, can we buy Tesla? Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's buy.
Can we get rid of the heart and
you
soul?
have to get rid of the founder.
Yeah, because it works so well with Apple.
Yeah, because that worked well with you guys.
Yeah.
You kicked out the founder, and then you needed to bribe him back in.
Yeah.
And then he ran the company till the day he died. Yeah. That's a different subject. But the other leak was that they filed a patent for a vehicle design that involved a lithium-based floor.
Ooh.
Just like a Tesla, the lithium batteries lining the floor, as well as a specific type of door design that kind of opens differently than most cars would. But all it basically proved was that Project Titan is still very much at large, and that they're still investigating that kind of tech. We're still not really sure at this point if it's tech that they're going to implement and partner with some other car company, or if Apple's legitimately going to start making their own. I was curious what you guys would rather see them do.
Partner with Tesla. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just I would
They
like.
could. That's an option.
They could, but we talked about it. We see how the UI works within Tesla. It's not the best, but I like Apple would just be piggybacking off of the primary foundation of Tesla. So they're not really adding much to it, Okay, we're gonna give you CarPlay and Siri. Okay, whatever. Like it's not essential to the core function of the vehicle. So I just don't see that being practical. But
I think the issue that Apple's going to have if they want to be a major player in the automotive market, which I don't blame them for, because I think that market's going to be huge over the next 10 years. It's already huge, but I mean just the modernizing of it and the EV side and the autonomous side is kind of a revolutionizing to the industry, just like the iPhone revolutionized the smartphone industry. But what worry they have going into this is before the iPhone came out, there was nothing like it.
Right.
There were maybe some phones that had touchscreens and stuff, but
clunky
the
Blackberries.
yeah, like the phones everyone was using at that time were nothing like the iPhone. It was so ambitious and different.
Right.
And whatever Apple may try to do with the car, I feel like Tesla's design scheme and their ideologies and their principles for how a car should work and feel as you drive it, and more specifically not drive it.
Yeah.
It's so on point with what Apple's ideologies are about how products should work for you and just be seamless, and it's not the same situation, whereas the iPhone was kind of going into a market with a completely different perspective. The Apple car can't really, because of Tesla.
Yeah.
Because of Tesla's ideology. I mean, if you just look at the menus and how a Tesla operates, like it already looks like something Apple made. It's like if I think a lot of Tesla employees are former from Apple. Last I heard Elon talking about that kind of thing, that they picked up a lot of people from that industry. But that's a big concern I have for Apple trying to enter the automotive market, is they're probably going to pull a Pro Display XDR and make something ultra luxury for a very tiny market, but they'll be happy with it, and YouTubers will buy it because it's Apple. And
oh, you're a YouTuber, sweet. We get an Apple car, Randy.
We got something.
I think it could easily start at $180,000, and they won't care, because Apple's core ideology is still making the best product in its class, not making the most widely available one. So as much as I'm the Apple sheep, I think the car is a different monster entirely. It's not like the watch. It's not like the AirPods. It's not like the wearable market or the iPhone market. This is something Tesla's really got them beat in.
Yeah, but the thing is, here's my only counter projection here, is that
Okay.
Tesla hit the ground running with the most expensive, and they were each model cheaper, so that way it can help fund the next one because they were a startup. Apple's not. They
Right.
have a lot of money put to the side. If they wanted to enter it, if they come in on the reverse side of it, start relatively cheaper, and then have some type of software updates that you can pay for, part of their service packages, so to say. And each
includes Apple News.
yeah. See, but if you just start lower end first and work your way up, then I could see that you would see it the same way that we saw Apple Watch. Maybe the first one, like, ooh, we got a 24-karat gold. Well, okay, great, and you know what I mean. And then that quickly went away to the point where they dropped the edition last year, and we're hoping we get an edition this year. But if we don't, I get it. So. I think they kind of understand consumer behavior enough where, like, all right, people, this whole premium market, the premium is no longer in the hardware, which the whole competition's catching up to. It's in the software. That's your market, and Apple has the software. Now, if they were to make some type of car and put car OS in there, and they just started off cheaper first and work your way up, the same way they're doing the Apple credit card, I think we might be able to see real exponential growth because Apple's not coming into the game as a pioneer into it now like they did with smartphones. They're coming in on the back end of it when everybody else has laid the foundation. So their objective isn't about, okay, here's the price, and you got to meet the price and catch up to the competition. They're the ones who are catching up. So they have to take competition away. They have to take the buyers away. So the only way that they can be competitive is, I would say, starting cheaper first and then work your way up.
What do you think, Nick?
So I totally never even thought of Randy's perspective.
Thank you.
And that's a really good one because I think it would be ideal to have them, start with like a Model 3 competitor, say, even undercut it, or, 40,000 or 30,000, somewhere in there. But at the same time, the problem really isn't a money problem. It's a growth problem. And Apple can throw all of its $250 billion in cash at a money problem. They can't throw that much money at a growth problem. If you remember when Tesla was rolling out the Model 3 and they were getting the production ramp up, Elon said multiple times on multiple occasions, it's production hell. I think designing and manufacturing a car is infinitely more difficult than a phone.
I agree.
Just the scale perspective. And so I don't think
and the
that
complexity.
I don't think they could just jump in and start making a Model 3, at least at that scale. Sure, they could make a dozen of them, but the trick is making 5,000 a week, and I don't think that Apple could just say, okay, here's $250 billion. We will now make 5,000 of these cars every week. I think they have to grow into that. They have to start with the small demand, expensive car, and then grow. You learn how to manufacture cars and learn how to manage that properly, and then grow into a little more mass market. And then you continue to do the Tesla strategy, because while Tesla definitely did it because of financial reasons, there was a huge benefit in doing that just with learning how to do it. And Apple, even though they don't need to do it financially, they would be missing out on a huge benefit of just knowing how to make the car.
True. Yeah, I think you both brought up really good points. I would agree and disagree on certain levels. I think what Randy described is basically what I would do if I was in charge. That's like the description of, like, ideally if they want to play to win, if they want to be a major player, given they are not a player right now. They're not even in the ballpark. Yeah. Apple does not make any kind of vehicle aside from the Mac Pro, of course. But I think that's what they would have to do if they wanted to be taken seriously. I just feel like, knowing how Apple handles their markets, they're not one to jump in head first. like statistically, I've always seen Apple kind of dip their toes in the water and not try to be early on something. They always want to be later, or they want to start big and then see what kind of market interest they get, and then once they have a bit more PR and customer feedback to work with, then they start getting a bit more ambitious with the affordable options or the cheaper options. So, like, you don't have to convince me that the future of the 2020s and where you're going to see the most amount of growth in technology is the autonomous vehicle market. I'm sold on that. Apple may not be, just because of their infrastructure and how much of their company is based around consumer electronics and phones and wearables and all that. So that may be how their company's all built, and trying to reorient themselves as more of a Tesla competitor, which I think if there is a company out there that could be a Tesla competitor, it would be Apple. Oh my God. Siri scared the crap out of me. I'm home alone right now, by the way. Scared out of my mind.
You're not alone. You have your Pixel friends.
Oh my God. But anyways, obviously Apple has more money than Tesla does. So all the things Tesla has done between the charger networks or the Gigafactory or the whole lineup of semi-truck to Roadster to Model 3 to X and S, Y, all that stuff, like, Apple would have the budget to make just as big as a dealer if they wanted to. They've got the money for it. It just kind of depends on how big of how much faith does Apple really have in this market. Personally, I think this would be a great one to invest in. I think, and they are, clearly. They're passing the patents. They're looking to buy companies over this. They've got a pretty big staff on Project Titan, so they're heavily researching it. I just feel that Apple's not the kind of company to enter a market with the more affordable option. That's usually not how they do it. Maybe they would do it differently because it's a car company. I think if they were smart, they would. But after seeing things like, $35,000 Mac Pro, I don't have a lot of faith that they're going to do that.
Yeah.
Yes, Nick?
Well, so if you look, let's correlate a potential Project Titan car with the iPhone. Okay. When the first iPhone came out, as far as the market was concerned, it was the most expensive car, but who did it target? It targeted the everyday person. It targeted people who, didn't have a smartphone already. The smartphones of the day were very complicated and very niche. To correlate that to today's car market, the electric car and self-driving car of today is very niche. It's very it's not mainstream. Like, you ask one person on the side of the street, they're gonna be like, "What's Tesla? They make electric cars, or was that the guy who smokes weed?" I'm confused. They're not into this. It's niche that we're all
which
into,
is fine.
Which is totally fine. Exactly. No, it's totally fine. But
not that there's
I'm
anything
just saying,
wrong with that.
there totally is. You need a Tesla. Anyway, I think if Apple.
Part.
Well, I
were
live
saying
in Colorado.
it like it was
Y'all
a
don't know what
weirdo.
you're talking about.
Which we find also brave and beautiful.
Anyway,
Go on, Nick, please.
so if you correlate that to the car market of today, if Apple were to announce a car, it would be the easiest car. It probably wouldn't even have a steering wheel. Because if you think about, everyone thought back with the iPhone, you needed plastic buttons, right? We need a steering wheel. Apple would be like, no, you don't need a steering wheel. You don't need any buttons at all. You just need to talk to Siri. They'd Applify it. But they wouldn't be hitting the same market that Tesla is. Because Tesla will ultimately, if Apple jumps into this market, likely end up like, BlackBerry or Android. They'll be the lower cost, still providing most of the same features. It'll just be a lower cost because that's the market they're going after. Apple's, always on the premium side. So they're going to be going after the Model S owners. They're going to be going after the people who would spend, $100K plus on a car. And they want it to be as posh as possible, not having a steering wheel, maybe having the front seat swivel around so you can have a conversation with the people in the back. It's super futuristic things, which aren't that futuristic, to be honest. Like, give it 10 years, we'll be there. But it's something that Apple is going to be good at if they position themselves as this iPhone revolutionary kind of product.
But iPhone got into the hands of people because they became more affordable. The moment they started over time, and Apple is now more valuable through that strategy. They became more valuable under Tim Cook than they did under Steve Jobs' strategy. And the core of my thought process that I don't think they're going to go after the Model S people first. I think they'll do it simultaneously with Model 3 style, but I don't think that will be first. They don't have an incentive to let's go for the pish posh first, so they can help fund this division when it's all the same capital funds that they're working off of. So I don't I don't see I don't see it going that way. I wouldn't be surprised if it does. They're just stupid if they do. They have to be more cognitive that
ouch,
their audience.
Did you just call me stupid, Randy?
No,
Apple.
I'm saying Apple, not you.
No, but that was my point that I gave.
Yeah, but because you're coming from a point of history trends, and I see that. I understand why you think that, because that's what history has shown us with Apple. But that's what they showed when they were still growing from a
yeah.
They're not competing in the Microsoft Windows category anymore. They dominated mobile, and with that capital fund, the same way Microsoft dominated PC, they're using that money for other things. You don't see. First of all, shout out to Microsoft for breaking the $1 trillion market cap. Woot woot! But that money, they don't.
The hell did they do to get that? I don't get it.
Yeah.
They exist.
We won't see.
They're just updates.
They're just updates. I lost my train of thought.
Oh my gosh!
Sorry, Randy. Go ahead.
No, I legit lost my train of thought. Not because of that. I forgot where I was going.
That's my bad.
Yeah, but you guys get my point. You know what I'm saying. It wouldn't make sense. It would be totally pro Apple for them to do it, but it'd be the wrong choice, because if you need to now go after people to get their business from something, we went into iOS, we went into iPhones when there was nothing in its existence, so that's why they were able to do what they did. But now you're targeting people who drive their whole lives. This is not a new concept. This isn't a new industry.
People used walled phones for years.
Where I think I agree a tad more this time around. I'd side a little bit more with Randy on the fact that I don't think that Tesla's a niche market and Apple would be targeting the everyday consumer. I think the difference is the iPhone didn't really have much like it when it came out, and the difference with this market is I think what Apple's going up against, there is something already that is the iPhone to the BlackBerry. You know what I'm saying? The everyday car, any day Ford, Honda, whatever you can think of. That's the BlackBerry of today. Tesla is the iPhone, except it's the iPhone that isn't from Apple. It's the ideologies, the principles that Apple would apply, but it happens to not be under Apple's branding because Elon beat him to it. And I totally agree with you. Apple would love to have a car with the seats that swivel around or the no steering wheel and stuff like that. But the only reason Teslas have them now is because they legally have to. They want
exactly.
They want the car to drive itself completely too. And by the time it is legal to do that, Tesla's going to be 4 steps ahead of Apple by the point that time comes, because they're going to have such an infrastructure, such a massive amount of factories producing cars, plus gigafactories producing batteries to get the prices down. Whenever Apple enters the market, whether it's, I don't know, the very, very soonest, probably next year or the year after that, that's like absolute soonest. It's probably even further away. Yeah. But whenever they do enter, Tesla's still got Semi, Roadster, S, X3 ahead of them. So imagine what Tesla's going to have in another 3 years compared to what Apple's probably going to start off with. I just feel like maybe Apple's thinking they don't even have a chance. Maybe they're not even going to try.
Which then we'll go back to your initial question. It'll be software.
They come late to the game, but they usually won't enter the game unless they know they have something that's better than everyone else's, even if it's more expensive. Which is why you may not see them enter the car market because of that. They would rather buy out Tesla because they're like, that's, if we built a car, it would basically be what you guys already built. So it makes no sense for us to just make what you made and put our logo on it, because we're not going to be able to compete with your infrastructure and the fact that Tesla is not very profit driven right now, whereas Apple is. They're going to make their money back on that stand, They're the kind of company that's like, we don't care that the Mac market makes up, 1% of our revenue. We're going to make sure that we get our money back when designing this thing. Whereas Tesla's like, 4 years losing money. Okay, that's fine. Needs to get done.
This is fine. I'm okay with
this
events.
is fine.
I'm totally fine with this situation.
This is fine. Yeah.
It's an interesting subject, though. No doubt.
One that we are definitely going to keep on revisiting time and time again.
Yeah, I got to do a video on this, but it might be too long. I don't know. The podcast is a better way to talk about it.
Do it.
But
I like long videos.
You guys had very, very good points you brought up. Thank you.
You're welcome. Something
Well, that's the point.
If I ran Apple, if I ran Tesla, I mean,
you would get it right, Randy.
We're just speculating. I can only imagine. Like, I maybe we're speculating, and then this is just based off of what we see on the outside. This doesn't even include like the stuff that they've been testing behind the scenes that we don't know about.
Sure.
I'm sure there are so many other variables and aspects that we haven't even thought about considering yet, because we're just looking at what is already on the market today, which is part of the equation. But then it's all about this
one
other
side of the story. Yeah,
there's a whole other thing. So, I mean, we're just a bunch of little pipsqueaks in the whole grand scheme of things, just trying to speculate. But I mean, you guys understand my thought process. You know where I'm coming from with it. And Nick, your train of thought makes a lot of sense. I would not be surprised in the slightest if that's what happens. I'm done.
Randy's trying to be all respectful. Nick's like, no, screw you.
I'm over it.
So
maybe
a good way to close this in a more fun note rather than just speculation. Let's move more to the wish list and say we're all big Tesla fanboys, undeniably. All of us want a Tesla,
really,
and we're pretty close to getting them. What would an Apple car do? Let's just leave price out of it, because that's without saying. Ignoring price and just talking about the car as a whole, what would the Apple car have to do to persuade you to get it over a Tesla? Ignoring price.
Ooh. Okay. So, just like with the iPhone, I'm going to go back to history, Randy, because I think it's important. Just like with the iPhone, people did not know what the iPhone was going to look like before the iPhone came out.
Sorry.
They didn't know.
I just needed to get my shot, and I was still bitter about that thing 5 minutes ago.
Thanks. The people, and like even with the Apple Watch, but like with the iPhone too. Like I remember Scott Forstall was telling a story about how they told whatever carrier they were working with, like, oh, we'll just add that button later. Yeah. And then like rumors started to spread that Apple was like making a Lego phone because no one could comprehend the touchscreen and the updatable operating system, and just adding a button in later. You're like, oh, it must be like Legos, and you can put like the keys on it. And so I feel like we are at the point right now where we're like, oh, it's a Lego phone, or oh, it's not going to have a steering wheel, it's not going to flip around the seats, and have an all glass roof, and like oh, displays in the ceiling. I whatever you make up your crazy story. We have no idea what Apple is thinking about, and whatever Apple's going to make is going to be a million times better than anything we could talk about right now. So with that, Randy, what are your thoughts?
Jesus, you didn't even answer the question.
Exactly.
I didn't know you were running for politics, Nick. That was a great way to dodge a... Damn. All right.
Apple's answer is, what is a car really? Is it 4 tires?
It's a Mac Pro.
What's a car? I hate that little girl so much. Okay. What's a car?
It's the ultimate mobile product.
All right. Well, I'm not gonna take the coward's way out, and Sweeney, I'm gonna give. Here
About
is
specific.
specifics. All right. What Apple would have to do to get my business first, before anything, minimalism, and they're very good at it. I want Model 3 style minimalism. I am sold. I love the idea of having a Model S style Model 3, but that's not gonna happen. So Model 3, you have my heart, you have my soul, and and so yeah, minimalism, hardware wise, everything about it, outside and in, clean, and they are so good with it. So I'm not worried about that part because every device that they make serves a purpose. It has a function that is in Apple's DNA. That was during Steve Jobs, and clearly it's been post Steve Jobs. It's fine. So that's the first thing. You need to have that, or I'm not taking you seriously. Two, I would love to have this Apple OS integration the same way that's compatible with iOS, which I would make more sense. Yeah, it has to be another spin-off of iOS because iOS is mobile, and what's more mobile than a vehicle? So I want CarOS to be a very extensive CarPlay, like CarPlay OS, which is all integrated with iOS. So that way we can still have the same functions like with HomeKit. You can do the summoning your car and turning it on, climate control, X, Y, and Z, security, privacy, etc.
Right.
All that has to be just spot on. It can't be an afterthought the same way HomePod was an afterthought. I need it to be. I need CarPlay OS, and that's what I'm going to call it, or CarOS. I need that to be the soul that really makes it what it is. So having that, those first two, minimalism and then the software, have to be, that's the hardware software portion aligned, is what will get my attention. What will make me walk away from Tesla is you need to have better autopilot features, because that's the only reason why I want, that's the only reason why I want a Tesla. Autopilot, enhanced autopilot. I want everything, because everything I just painted for you before that, anybody can do with software. It's not there are there's regular cars, not even EVs out there, that you can remote start your vehicle from a distance. It's all already out there. But what makes Tesla is the promise of an autonomous future where the steering wheel will be there because laws have to, we have to have somebody there piloting it, and I get that. For safety reasons, I get that. But we have a promise of an autonomous future in commuting. Apple has to be better than Tesla at that. Without a better enhanced autopilot, or whatever they want to call it, you won't have my business, because that's not the promise. That's not the future I'm buying into. So minimalism, software being the forefront of everything because it's the soul, and you have to have better autopilot.
Wow. Good answers, guys.
How about you, Drew?
Your turn, Drew.
Oh, dang. I need a 6K display, obviously. That's the only way you're going to sell me on. No, realistically, Randy's pretty on point. I would agree with basically everything he said. I would also add Tesla does have some weak points that I think Apple could catch up on if they did get ambitious in this industry, one being insurance. Teslas have notoriously higher insurance than other cars because their repair policies, but Apple's not known for being much better at that either. Tesla customer service is extremely understaffed compared to probably how Apple customer support is. It's very active and very quick to respond to things, and Apple stores generally, I know there's horror stories and everything, but Apple stores generally have very good customer service, high customer satisfaction, where sadly there's a lot of YouTubers who will not give you that great story about Tesla service. There are issues they run into with accidents and with repairs taking a long time and the parts being limited. And if Apple could start tackling that, also be a bit more consistent with the pricing. Tesla's kind of wishy-washy sometimes with now it's this much after delivery. Now it's this much before delivery. We're changing it later. We're going to actually downgrade the standard range model via software update that's going to remove your heated seat. It gets a little complicated behind the scenes, as simple as they make ordering a Model 3 look. Yeah. There's a lot of streamlining and making the customer understand the process easier that Apple gets pretty right with their products that I think Apple could look at these weak points and be like, okay, this is how we improve on it. Of course, while still keeping in mind the software experience, the minimalism, and the promise of full self-driving. All that needs to be present as well for me to be sold on it. Other than that, I guess just design would probably be the only way to persuade me. If they could make a design that was genuinely better looking or more functional, but I very much have a hard time imagining how they could do that, because of all the cars I've ever seen in my life, I feel like the Model 3 is like peak. That's like as perfect as a vehicle could get functionally wise, and there's little problems here and there, but yeah, I genuinely don't think Apple could do it. Just knowing how they work and how they design things, they needed someone as ambitious and as dangerous as Elon Musk is to take that company to survive. So I'm glad they exist, and I'm interested if Apple wants to compete, but I doubt they'll be able to win me over, even with the
all
car
I
on the
heard
market.
from that whole thing is that you agreed with me. Today, Nick Drew loves me more. In your face!
I love you both. I love you both so very much.
Entire podcast with just me last time.
Yeah, but he keeps agreeing with my thoughts more. He goes, Randy, you're making good points. I guess Nick is all right.
I disagree with Randy occasionally. We didn't get into the. I didn't get into the disagreements because it's your podcast back. But anyway, that I think wraps
next
up.
week you're gonna lay into me.
We'll have time down the road when there's less things to talk about for us to rant about the Mac Pro and stuff.
For sure.
Or the XDR display.
True.
But are there any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
Nick, I'm
Air
not
Power's
sorry.
dead. Marquez Brownlee, please come on our podcast. Randy, I
Pixel
love you.
sucks.
Drew.
Silence.
Beautiful. Beautifully well elegant. What words
Write
could
us a
you
review.
say, Ann Sweeney?
Write us a review on Apple Podcasts. We'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you all for listening, and we will catch you all next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And cut. Cut, boy.